Okay. The first band I ever got into was the Beatles, listening to them on the radio on the way to Grandma's. And Paul McCartney just had so many great bass lines with that band and as a solo artist. Now this is going to sound a little weird to play it because a lot of his lines were played on a short scale Hofner bass with flat wound strings using a felt or rubber pick, a very thick pick. Now I have a rubber pick. This thing is about 4 times thicker than a regular thickness bass pick. This is a standard scale bass, 34-inch, and these are round wound. So Paul McCartney's bass lines, they don't really sound right, but you'll get the point. I've rolled the tone off, so you get kind of that thumpiness that he had on his songs. And rubber picks get torn up really hard by round wound strings, so yeah, if you want to use a rubber pick, you probably want to go to flat wounds. But this song is one of those ones off of Abbey Road, one of my favorite albums of all time. There we go. Yeah, you all know that one. So Come Together, Paul McCartney. Great bass line. Okay, one song in drop D, so just give me a moment here. In high school, I had a friend who was really into Tool. And at that time, I wasn't listening to a whole lot until about my senior year or so. Maybe it was my junior year. Anyway, that was about the time that Lateralis was released. And I had MTV on, I think. This was back when they still showed music videos sometimes. And the video for Schism came on. And it had that intro, which I never had figured out. And then that bass line came in, and it really stuck with me. I went out and bought the album the next day. And it's been one of my favorites ever since. It's a great album, great bass line. That also sounds better when you play it right. But there's just so many cool things about that bass line. For one, it sounds great. 2 is the counting. If you were to write that out, it's basically in 12/8, but instead of being divided into 4 groups of 3, like 12/8 is usually kind of like your blues or something, it's divided into a group of 5 and a group of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Which gives it a really unique feel, and it's one that I really haven't heard in any, certainly not in any other rock and roll or radio music, and even in some of the really avant-garde classical music and jazz, you don't really hear that kind of division of beat. And Tool being Tool, when they go down to the, they put it in A, you know, the kind of the pre-chorus bit. And if you'll notice there, it's in 13/8 now, and it's basically the same riff, but they're holding that open A an eighth note longer. was jamming with a guitar player once, and we were jamming on Schism just because we happened to both know it, at least that portion of it. And he was playing that in 12/8. And I said, "You need to add an eighth note in there. It's in 13/8." And it kind of threw him off for a while. He was pretty good at the counting, and he knew, so he was able to pick it up. But it does go into 13/8 there, which, hey, great. I love that kind of stuff. Okay, let's get back to standard tuning, because I don't need drop D for any more of these. Okay. Every college bass player, they study jazz, they study classical, they're going to get into some Jocko. I got into Jocko back when I was in high school. I didn't really get what he was doing at the time. I had to really study jazz to figure out what he was doing and why he was as important as he is, and to really appreciate just how far he took the electric bass, particularly in a jazz setting, since before him, outside of some fusion, you really didn't see a lot of electric bass. And he played it almost exclusively. And I could pick any of a dozen songs, a dozen pieces that he played on. Teen Town or Portrait of Tracy. But I'm more interested in bass lines. And a lot of people focus on Jocko as a soloist or a composer. The guy could also groove. And a great example is The Chicken. Check out the birthday concert. Now, The Chicken, it's not really so much a bass line as it is a groove over a 16-bar blues or a 12-bar blues with a 4-bar tag, as I approach it. But he's got this really cool groove that just fits so well, and I'll just play one time through the chords, let you take a listen to it. I'll play again with the bridge pickup solo, Jocko style. Another great song to play. There's a couple of recordings that Jocko made of that song. The birthday concert is my favorite, mostly because it's just got him grooving while Michael Brecker solos for like 5 minutes. And hearing Michael Brecker solo, even if you're not a saxophone player, it's just awesome. I love Michael Brecker. Okay. When I was in high school, my best friend was really into a lot of 70s rock. There was a kind of a small 70s rock revival when I was in high school. And so he bought this CD, and it was just a compilation of greatest hits. I think he bought it at Target for like $5. And he called me over and he said, "Dude, you got to hear this bass line." I'm like, "Well, okay." And it was a long song. And it had this really cool intro with all this really cool acoustic guitar and feedback, and then the bass kicked in. There we go. Roundabout by Yes. That was my first exposure to Yes, was my good friend showing me that song. And I ended up becoming a huge Chris Squire fan. I've seen Yes live once with the classic lineup. They're fantastic. And I've got pretty much all of their records now. I think all but Open Your Eyes, and I'm not sure I want that one. I'll probably buy it at some point. But that was the first time I heard Chris Squire. I'd maybe heard Owner of a Lonely Heart before that on the radio sometime, but I still don't like Owner of a Lonely Heart. And Owner of a Lonely Heart doesn't have as much bass presence as Roundabout did, or really a lot of other Yes songs. Chris Squire is just such a dominating force within that band, and is a real big reason why Yes has been very influential to a lot of bands, but between Chris Squire's playing and his singing, he really gives a unique sound to Yes. No one else really plays quite like Chris Squire. There's a few prog rock players nowadays that come close, that play with the pick, that have a similar sound. Some of them are also very good singers. None of them seem to do it quite the way Chris did. There's never quite as much, you know. Everything he played just had so much balls to it, even when he wasn't really leading the band. Say in Parallels. Parallels is kind of all the good parts of Roundabout condensed. And his bass line isn't as dominating, yet it still works great. Alright, now my favorite bass line. This is one that I play pretty much every time I pick up the bass. I got into Jamiroquai years ago. And at first I didn't like them. I was into rock and roll. I was into blues. I didn't understand this funk and this soul and, I guess, acid jazz. And it wasn't until I started getting into stuff like Sly and the Family Stone and James Brown and Tower Power. I went back and listened to Jamiroquai, and all of a sudden I was hooked. I loved it. And the album I bought was Traveling Without Moving. And now you might think I'm going to play Virtual Insanity, and I'm not, because that's a great bass line, but it's not my favorite on the album. My favorite on the album is Cosmic Girl. Yeah, Cosmic Girl. I love that it's kind of a 16th note funk pattern, kind of like what I think like Rocco Prescia might have played if he played more melodically rather than well, Prescia likes to play a lot of octaves and he'll play up the scale. The Cosmic Girl is kind of based around this this E minor arpeggio. No, E minor arpeggio. You don't really hear that very often in Tower Power. Once in a while he'll do something like that, but at least the Tower Power I've listened to, like, it tends to be more of the octaves and the fifths rather than he wouldn't throw a whole lot of thirds in there. At least the stuff that I've listened to. And you also don't get as many of the kind of the Flea style or the Jocko style 16th note runs in there. No, it's just such a cool line, and it's got so many classic funk and fusion elements to it. And it's a ton of fun to play once you can get it down. And if you can make it groove, it is a hard song to groove, but if you can make that song groove, it's just one of the most fun songs out there to play on the bass guitar. I like that song so much that I bought a Trace Elliot, like Stuart Zender was using at the time, and I kind of try to EQ it to get that sound. And I don't really get there. It helps to have new strings, and of course using the pre-shape on the amp kind of helps get there. But anyway, that wraps it up. That's my 10 favorite bass lines. So, see you around.